All right, so main topic. We're going to interview our guest, Nadia, which this is also kind of just a stealth premiere of our interview series that we're doing. that we decided to do. So I'll break this out of the main podcast. We have a couple questions here, and Josh, if you want to add anything, you can.
Anything A.
Yeah. First is just a general question of like, what made you decide you wanted to write about games, and where/how did you get your start?
I kind of fell into it in the very early aughts. I had a bit of a weird young adulthood in which I didn't really finish college, so I just went online and effed about for a while, and eventually it came out that I was pretty okay at blogging. If you go to usgamer.net and read my farewell to the site, I kind of go pretty in-depth for the first time into how I got into games writing and why it happened. But the long and the short of it is, I think my first real breakout piece was on my blog. I kind of did a review / joking like look at a hentai manga about McDonald's and Mayor McCheese or Officer Big Mac. I can't remember who it was. But either way, people started to become a fan of my writing. And
is that still up?
No, it's long gone where it belongs. In the depths of the
garbage.
internet. Probably scattered into light particles. Point is, as I wrote, I eventually captured the attention of one Mr. Jeremy Parrish, who was part of the launch of OneUp.com back in the olden days. And he asked me, do you want to write an article for us? And we will give you money. And I'm like, wow, money. And I desperately needed money at that time. So I wrote a short article for OneUp about Mega Man. And from there, I just kept on getting freelance work from OneUp, from other sites that were opening up at the time. There was a really big boost around the time of the Wii when it came out, because everyone was investing their money into video game coverage because, oh my god, this is the hot new thing. Of course, it didn't last, and they didn't see their return on investment immediately, so a lot of sites were shut down. I've been through so many sites, I can't remember all of them, but the ones I do remember most, I was with Nerve.com, which was a lot of fun, a blog called 61 Frames Per Second. I was with About.com. I was their Nintendo DS guide. I really liked that job. I was with US Gamer full-time for 5 years until that ended quite recently, unfortunately.
I feel like it was so much longer than that, but that's just because that's what I know. That's where I know you from.
Yeah. Well, I think US Gamer, I was freelancing for a long time before then. So almost as long as the site wasn't available, but eventually I was taken on full-time, thankfully. And now I am independent with Kat, because when I was with US Gamer, we started the Act of the Blood God podcast. Sorry, we didn't start it, but I became the co-host. And surprisingly, like, I had never ever seen myself in any sort of voice work or radio work or anything of that sort, but we just really hit it off as a team. And our podcast gained a lot of popularity. So when US Gamer shut down, we said, well, you know what, let's try this independently. And
might as well.
Thankfully, it's going really well.
Yeah.
So we're really happy about things. And in the meantime, I'm doing some writing. I'm doing some game localization, which is really exciting for me. I'm doing some projects that I can't really speak about right now, but they're also very exciting for me. And hopefully, we're hoping that Blood God will have a website soon, and I can do some more writing there, because if I'm not forced to write, I kind of fall. I just fall back into playing PlayStation instead.
Oh, I feel it. Yeah, I feel that.
So it's good for me to just exercise my strengths.
Yeah. Next question is, you cover a lot of like JRPG stuff, as we've talked about throughout this podcast. But if you had to pick one, what is your all-time favorite JRPG?
Oh my god, you're gonna do that to me. Probably Final Fantasy VI.
6.
That was or it's 3. Whatever you want to call it.
No, I'm actually just I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just like 6 or yeah. Okay, so 6.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 666.
Okay.
That's my favorite. Yeah, so that was the first RPG I really got in depth with since Dragon Quest. Because, of course, as you know, Dragon Quest, after the NES era, it faded out for a very long time. So I lost interest for a while. And then here comes Final Fantasy VI and Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana really got me back into RPGs. And then when I was really into that, I said, okay, I hear Final Fantasy VI is coming out. I'm like, oh, I got to get that. So I did. And it just... It really blew me away. I know it's not a perfect RPG. I know it has a lot of flaws. There you go. But the depth of the story, the depth of the characters, the depth of the storytelling, and just how much you could break the game if you wanted to. There is a piece on usgamer.com, or is it .net? God, I'm already forgetting. But the point is, I interviewed Ted Woolsey, the translator.
Right, I remember reading that.
Yeah, and that was a really fascinating interview to have because technically his writing indirectly inspired me to become a writer. So it was really nice to get to sit down with him. But yeah, I think 6 made such an impression on me that I can't really say it's not my favorite JRPG.
I'm surprised it wasn't you didn't say 4 because you had that good article from not that long ago about your experience with Final Fantasy 4. Well, it was Final Fantasy 4, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right, but that came after Final Fantasy 6, believe it or not.
Right, because
Yeah. To summarize that article, which I'm actually really surprised how well that went over. I wrote it completely on a whim because Kat said we need something about Final Fantasy 4 today. No, she said we need something about the SNES today, and I said, here you go. And so to summarize, for people who haven't read it, again, it's on usgamer.net. And when I was 15, I had to have major jaw surgery, which involved breaking my jaw, moving it forward, and being wired up for a while and not being able to eat solid foods or anything. Yeah. And during that time, which was a very difficult surgery, Final Fantasy IV, I played for the first time, and even though I had played 6 by then, I really enjoyed how direct and straightforward and almost kind of cheesy 4 was by comparison. And it was a really big comfort to me, and so I appreciate it for that reason, if nothing else.
I forgot what... I have the questions here, and I'm like, how did I forget what I'm going to ask? It's right here in front of me. Okay, so Final Fantasy 6. If Final Fantasy 6 is your favorite, do you have a least favorite JRPG? This might be a lot hard. I don't know.
You know what? Even though it's not the worst RPG in the world, I really hated Legend of Legaia. If you remember that for the PlayStation.
Is that the one that I think I was watching Kazuma Hashimoto's stream? Does that have something to do with like a demon baby or Satan or something?
Probably. No, it has to do with, it's actually, I think, inspired partially by The Mist by Stephen King, like 90% of video games. It was a game about, like, there was a mist covering the world, and there's monsters in it, and you have to find these Genesis trees to clear back the mist. And just, it was such a generic, such a PlayStation 1-ass era RPG, and I spent money on it, and I was just so mad at it and hating it, and just, it was so unbalanced. I think that's what frustrated me, and I hated the characters. And I just remember one infamous line where the real sort of cheerful girl stereotype character asked the main character what a pimp is, because that's where game translation was back in the day. Close second goes to Ni no Kuni 2.
Really?
Which I hate played for every second until I finished it. I don't know why I did that, but I did, and I'd probably do it again. I can't explain my fascination, my hateful fascination with that game. It's just there. I just hated the fact it wasted so much potential. Such a gorgeous looking game, and so boring.
I didn't like the skirmishes, but I did like the boss battles. That's kind of all I remember.
You know what,
of that one.
The boss system was fun. The boss battles were fun. I just hate the fact that you take a game what starts off with a nuclear bomb going off, and then the president of the United States, or wherever the hell it was,
the president of somewhere,
ends up as a JRPG hottie.
I don't know what was with that.
And instead of, like, he meets this little kid with ears who starts screaming about how he's Prince so-and-so from Ding Dong Dell, and instead of this president, like, doing the normal human thing and, like, screaming his head off, and he goes to a mirror and is like, hey, I'm pretty hot. And the world just blew up on your watch, dude. Do you not care? You have a son and a wife. Do you not care? He didn't care. Spoiler.
This is my life now.
And I have not played the original Ni no Kuni.
Oh, it's great. I love it.
Which I hear is fantastic. But I do want to say I just like it on principle because it's just the Talisman in JRPG form. The Talisman being one of my favorite fantasy books ever by Stephen King, and Richard Bachman was his pen name. Peter Straub was the other writer on that book, and I wanted to actually interview someone from the team about why they did that and why the Talisman influenced Ni no Kuni so much, and actually did it influence Ni no Kuni, and I couldn't get a hold of anyone. Kind of mad about that.
Oh well, yeah, that's level 5 for you, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's too bad. That would be I was just really curious. I thought it was such a neat link because you don't see the Talisman reference very often.
I have never heard of it until this conversation.
It's literally a fantasy book about a kid who goes. His mother is sick. He flips into another world, meets everyone has like a twin character.
Yeah,
you know
that sounds like Ni no Kuni.
Basically, what you get in Ni no. Yeah. And he has to travel to find the cure for his mother, and curing his mother will heal the world, which is sick in itself. It's a really, really great little fantasy book if you ever want to pick it up.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. And so next, moving on from level... Well, I guess I'm not technically moving on from level 5, because I did work on a couple Dragon Quest games, because this is Dragon Quest questions.
They did.
And supposedly may work on a Dragon Quest IX remake in the future, but who knows if that'll happen.
I'd like that.
Best or not best. I don't know. I put best and or favorite Dragon Quest, but I don't know if for you it's like different what you consider the best and what's your personal favorite.
That's a good question, because I have 3 that I like almost equally.
Oh,
so
this will be interesting, yeah.
maybe 4. I mean, I like Dragon Quest III for how much it did for the series and how it's still a good, solid RPG to play. 8 really revived the series. Really, it was actually the game that got me back into Dragon Quest because I was actually at a friend's house for the weekend, and she had work to do, and she said, "Hey, you want to play Dragon Quest? I have it on my PlayStation." I said, "Oh, sure, why not?" And I was just really impressed by the animation and the characters and the narration and how the localization was fantastic, which at the time you were still getting hit or miss on localizations. So with Dragon Quest 8, Dragon Quest 5, of course, is just incredible. And that's another one that was a big step for the series. Of course, I played that on the DS.
Yeah, because we didn't get Dragon Quest 5 until 2008, when Japan got it in 1992, before Pokemon. And I always have to point out, like, in my Mon Game articles, I'm like, look, everybody, Pokemon was not the first first series to do this.
No, it wasn't. 5 was all about collecting monsters.
If you look at like early Pokemon concept art, it actually looks reminiscent of Dragon Quest almost.
It kind of does. You're right about that. And all those agonizing hours trying to recruit a great dragon. Never did.
It's like random, isn't it? Like the system in 5 is.
It is, yeah.
It's not
like
great.
Pokemon, which does have a
but that's why they made Dragon Quest.
It's not like Pokemon, which does have a refined system. It's very random. The Great Dragon was not interested.
That's why they made the Monsters sub-series, which is also great.
Yeah, exactly. Which, to be fair, helped get, I think, the series back into the Western eye.
Definitely.
I do appreciate it for that. I never played it much myself. I did play, actually, I played Joker 2. And
so you said 3, 8...
3, 5, 8, and I'll say 11 as well, because 11 is just really good, and I think it was kind of like in the way Mario Odyssey is a realization of 64. I think that Dragon Quest 11 is a really good realization of of 8 in its.
Yes, I agree. I haven't played through all of 8 yet, but I can see how like it kind of evolved over time.
Yes, yeah.
I'm just so happy that so many people can play Dragon Quest XI S now, since it's on everything. It's on Game Pass.
Yeah. The accessibility is so important, and I really hope that we get more fans out of it, because we're always looking for more fans in the Dragon Quest space.
And then, so what of Dragon Quest? What would be your least favorite of them?
I have never liked 6.
Really?
I just have never been able to finish 6. It just does not interest me ever. I don't know what it is. I do like Carver. Carver's kind of cool.
6 interests me because of Terry, but that's because I played Dragon Quest Monsters. Was like the first Dragon Quest game I ever played.
Interesting.
So I played that. Then I get a Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior at the time, 1 and 2 for the Game Boy, and like I play it, and I'm like, wait, you don't get monsters in this? I don't want to play this.
Yeah.
And then,
womp. Sorry.
And then after playing Dragon Quest 11, I just decided now I'm going to collect all of the portable mainline Dragon Quest games. I still need 4. I still need Dragon Quest 4, but I have everyone, all the other ones. Well, 10 I don't count because that's Japan only.
Yeah, that's kind of a null. That's never coming to North America. Do you have Dragon Quest 3 or Dragon Warrior 3 for the Game Boy Color?
Because I heard that was the best version of that game.
That is a really good adaptation.
But I also have the Switch port as well, just because I wanted to support the localization when it came out. I was like, oh, I want to support the release on Switch so they can release the other one so more people can play them.
Yeah. I do like 3. I think they did a good job on it. I think the monsters look neat, but I am disappointed they don't animate the way they did even on the Game Boy Color. They had such really good animations.
And Game Boy Advance was out by the time that the Game Boy Color one came out, I believe.
You're right. I never thought about that.
Because I look at like the art on the box and it said like also works with Game Boy Advance. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I'm looking at the box right now.
A couple games had
Quest,
that
shelf. Yeah, and I see that now. And it's a really good adaptation beyond maybe the Super Famicom adaptation, which we never got officially, unfortunately.
And then, so we already talked about your favorite Final Fantasy. What about your least favorite? And this is always an interesting topic that I see, because I'm not like a huge Final Fantasy fan. I'm still getting into it, so it's interesting to see all these different opinions on these.
Least favorite Final Fantasy? You know what? I've never liked the original very much.
That's fair.
It's here's the problem with me and the original Final Fantasy. I used to rent a lot of my RPGs because they were expensive. You couldn't really buy them that easily. I rented Dragon Quest 3, and we all know that's an incredible game. Took it back to the store, whatever. Then I rented Final Fantasy, the original, and comparatively not as good. The battle system is so much slower. It's buggy as hell.
Oh yeah.
The translation is complete nonsense. Dragon Warrior games, for even though they had like such a small audience back in the day, had really great translations and localizations, like really impressive work that put into them. And Final Fantasy didn't really have that. I found it a really unforgiving game. I just found it a little too janky for my liking. And to this day, I've tried to really get into it several times over, even with Dawn of Souls, a PSP version, iOS version. I just can't do it. It's just not really something that excites me.
That's one of the ones I feel like you don't hear about that much. I feel like the Final Fantasies you hear people talking about are 3 or later. Which is like,
you're right.
Oh,
no, I think if people are talking about the ones they hate, they usually bring up 2, like not 4, actually 2. And I wouldn't say 2 is a great game, but at least it was interesting. They bring up 2, 8, and 13. I feel like. Yeah. 13 I haven't played.
I have it, once again. Still need to...
So haven't played it.
It was just after 7 Remake came out, people were writing about how, the battle system is kind of like an evolution of the Final Fantasy 13 one. And I'm like, maybe I'll like that one better.
13, I will say, has incredible music. Nothing wrong with the music.
The visuals still look great to me, too, honestly.
Oh, yeah, it still looks fantastic, but then they kind of forgot to build a game around it, so I hear. So I have heard defenders for it, though. I mean, I can't judge. I played the after years to the end. So.
And then next question: what is the most underrated JRPG in your opinion that you recommend more people play?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I always liked Breath of Fire 3, Breath of Fire in general. Although those are a bit of a bear because they are a little bit heavy with the encounters, a little bit wonky with the mechanics, but they're just so much fun. You get to turn into a dragon. What else do you need? I always had a real soft spot for the original Wild Arms.
I've wanted to check
I always
those out.
liked.
They seem so
Yeah,
interesting.
you know what? I haven't played the second or any of the ones following it, but the original just it's such a mess because you have these really nice overworld sprites, then you have these awful polygon monster models.
Oh, jeez.
Actually, Games Done Quick did a run of that game. If you wanted to look that up, it was very recently, so you can get a look at what it's like. But man, it just has the most beautiful soundtrack, one of the most beautiful game soundtracks on the PlayStation, easily. I think it could beat out in Final Fantasy VII in some regards. So, yeah, it's another example of not a great RPG, but you know what? If you're really into retro RPGs with a surprisingly dark story, you might like it. It's very Western.
I'm definitely thinking about checking those out. I've been, like, trying to come up with, like, a sci-fi JRPG story myself, because, like, I feel like sci-fi JRPGs get more overlooked more often than the fantasy ones.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like
I
trying to get into like the Phantasy Star and Star Ocean games because those are the ones I could like think of. And
yeah, Phantasy Star is another underrated series. I think 4. I would have loved to see M2 give us a 4, like gussy it up and put it on the Switch, because 4 is fantastic, but it does have some problems that make it a little inaccessible to some people. So if they had fixed it and put it on the Switch, it would have been really great. I'm disappointed that didn't happen.
And then one more underrated JRPG that we talked about on the podcast earlier, Monster Hunter Stories 1. Everybody should play that.
That's a yeah, I think so. I seem to remember something where you had to draw on the screen or something to attack the monsters, which I was like, okay, whatever, I can do without this. But the idea,
remember drawing on the screen so much as like you had to press buttons like quickly at certain when
maybe I'm confusing it with Yokai Watch.
The touchscreen thing is Yokai Watch.
Okay, yeah. So,
also underrated
I
in my
definitely
opinion.
remember more
to be honest,
paper rock scissors thing. Yeah. So I am looking very much forward to Monster Hunter Stories too. I think it's going to be really cute.
Now, this is the next question. Would you say that's one of your most anticipated 2021 games, or what is your most anticipated 2021? I guess Japanese game, since we're
probably Final Fantasy 16.
You think that's going to come out 2021?
They say it will, so maybe, yes, sure, okay. If not that, Breath of the Wild 2. Well, there you go.
I don't know if they're 2021, but
we have no guarantees here. Even the people who are guaranteeing the release date of their games. But I would say, I think there's a great chance of Final Fantasy 16 coming out this year because Yoshi P is not Nomura. He really adheres to his schedule. He knows how to get shit done. And being the huge Final Fantasy 14 stan that I am, and knowing how well they can write the story, and in fact, I hear the team for Heavensward is on this game. I'm really excited to see what they give us, because sometimes I said to people, oh, you gotta play Final Fantasy 14, the story's so good. Well, I don't like MMORPGs. Well, that's fair. I can't exactly tell you, like, you know what I mean? So, a single-player story from the Final Fantasy 14 team, even though some people are not enthusiastic about the graphics or the gameplay, we've only seen one trailer.
Yeah,
but,
you know how people are,
by that. I just want to say, look, well, me and all the other Final Fantasy 14 idiots out there, we're all like, you got to give it a chance. It's probably going to be
buddy, I know our buddy Michael Hyam, who have been on the podcast before, is super excited for it as well.
Yeah. Does he play 14?
He's a huge...
There you go.
14. I know a number of huge 14 fans in the games media space.
Yeah, I was indoctrinated by Mike Williams, and a friend of mine, Victor Hunter, who knew that I have a weakness for Final Fantasy IV's Kain. And he's like, oh, you gotta meet Estinian, which is Kain 2.0. I'm like, I go play the game, I'm like, this asshole really is just Kain 2.0.
We didn't know... So me and my friends were playing together, and we didn't know that Alphino, I think that's how you pronounce the name, we didn't know that was how you pronounce his name until, like, Heavensward. Even though, like, we watched the cutscenes, I was just like, wait, that's how it's pronounced? And we would make fun of him, like, we would pretend to, like, that we just hated him so much. Like, we'd be like, go away, Alphinaud.
Everyone hated him, but then things happen at the end of the first expansion.
Oh, he's alright.
First story that you're like, oh. Oh, poor guy. Okay, I
Yeah.
kind of feel for you now. Here's some hot chocolate.
And then we have another question about Japanese games. What's some Japanese games you hope get localizations in the future? Because I was reading a US Gamer piece that had the staff talking about like localizations you'd like to see, and I thought that was a good question.
Geez, if I remember correctly, I think my response was
Yeah,
Terranigma, even though it was localized, is not here. I would love to see Quintet's games just localized and put in a collection. I mean, they're already localized, but Illusion of Gaia can really use a relocalization.
Yeah.
That's such a great game, and I think it would really hit in this era when people are a lot more aware of social issues and social justice and so on. Because that was a game that really tackles that stuff, and it did not pull punches, even on the SNES. I'd love to see it come back into the spotlight. I mean, some people say, oh, it's boring to play, it's just a Zelda clone. Maybe it's not like the most exciting game to play, but the story was really fascinating. I just loved Quintet's stuff. It just never spoke down to you.
I had never heard of it before reading that, so that's pretty interesting.
You never played Illusion of Gaia or Terranigma?
Illusion of Gaia sounds familiar, the name sounds familiar, but
Nintendo pushed it really hard for a while back in the day because, back in the Super Nintendo era when people were like, hey, give us another Zelda. Okay, fine, here's your Zelda.
We have
it's
Zelda
not Zelda
at home.
That's the problem. we have Zelda at home. Here's Zelda at home. A game about a boy discovering the horrors of slavery.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
It's a very heavy game. Like, it deals with things like actual slavery with human beings. It doesn't try to cheap out by substituting with like little koala bears or something. It's actually about human trafficking and slavery and stuff like that.
That's
like I said, it doesn't talk
crazy
down to
to
you.
me. Like when I talk about, it reminds me of when I talk about like certain like shonen things and people write them off like it's too goofy because of this and that, and I'm like, no, you don't. There's like a lot more stuff going on in the background.
No,
like
exactly.
like
That's pretty much
I'm a big like One Piece fan, and people are like, oh, it's too goofy. It's not like serious. I'm like, no, there's stuff about slavery and the government and all this other stuff, like racism against fish people.
Damn fish people taking our fish jobs.
Yeah, so things are always, it's always fascinating when things are just like so much more than like, you know, we don't have to just like, we don't go to the store and just like look at a game's like cover art and be like, oh, this looks cool, like, you know,
Yeah.
and then it's like just judge it by the cover art, and then it just blows you away.
Yeah, which is good because Illusion of Gaia has like the most boring cover art in history. It's just a picture of the planet or something. Japan had
like
a really good box.
Yeah,
of course.
I remember. Maybe that's why I was like Illusion of Gaia, and I looked at the cover art, and I'm like, that looks kind of boring.
Yeah, it looked extremely boring, but it was a great game. I'd love to see it come back into the spotlight because I don't think it ever got a virtual console release. Terranigma has been available in Europe since the 90s, but in terms of virtual console or any sort of physical release or any sort of release in North America, not so much. So they're kind of linked story-wise, vaguely, and both are connected again vaguely to ActRaiser. So all three of those games on a card or something, I'd love that.
Oh, they even made it look kind of like the Zelda font. You know, like, yeah. They
right,
knew what they were doing.
They did, and they pushed it very hard. I don't think it sold very well, which is a shame because
they could just if they do it again, they should just do the Kirby method and just put angry eyebrows on it.
Put angry eyebrows on everything. Put angry eyebrows on the globe, picture of the globe.
And then okay. I have two more questions, and then we can get to.
Of course.
What are some of your favorite experience from your career so far? You know, whether that be like articles you wrote, meeting like different, like certain dev interviews, or certain convention experiences, any of that kind of stuff.
I mentioned my Ted Woolsey article. I still think I really enjoyed writing that. I did get to meet Yuji Horii.
Yeah, I'm so jealous of that.
That was amazing. What had happened was I went over to Japan to preview Dragon Quest XI, and not only did I sit there watching the game as they presented it to us in the boardroom, I really impressed the developers because I was pointing out all the references in the clip they were showing us. And I was like, oh, that's the reference to Dragon Quest 2. Oh, I like that reference to Dragon Quest 3 or 8 or whatever. So they were really enthusiastic about the fact that this little Canadian girl was just sitting there yelling at the screen. So.
That's great.
And I got to meet Yuji Horii himself. His office was like this kind
like
of
a castle.
style.
I saw it in the
Yeah.
There's like a documentary on YouTube that was translated now by Shmupulations, I believe, for the 30th
Probably,
anniversary.
yeah. So that's where
Yeah.
I was, and I actually got to hold a replica of Lodo's sword,
Wow, that's
which is really cool. And the blade. Here's a funny story: the blade for the sword has runes on it, right? And someone who was there at the interview was like, "What do the runes mean?" And Yuji Horii was just like, "I don't know." Apparently, Toriyama added them at some point. And it's like,
only
okay.
he knows what it means.
I love Japanese game developers. They just when it comes to lore, they're just like, I don't know.
Yes, Toriyama. Maybe he doesn't know what it means either. I just felt like putting something.
It looks cool.
Eh.
That's the reason most of the time. It looks cool. I appreciate that very much. So
Yeah.
getting to meet Yuji Horii was a big one. That was, and I also got to tell him how much Dragon Quest 3 in particular meant to me because I mentioned Ted Woolsey got me into writing, but so did Dragon Quest 3. When I played the game, I wrote this really horrible novel that pulled a lot from Dragon Quest 3, and it was awful. But I still have it. It's actually written in newsprint. It's just fading away practically. It's all in pencil. So he seemed to be kind of touched by that, which I think is really nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to tell him.
That's really cool. And then last question: what has the experience been like? I don't mean to bring up because it's kind of not a hard question, but just like I don't know how to say it, but like how is it? What has the experience been like going from like US Gamer to like going independent? Like what has that experience been like?
You know what? I've been independent for so long that before I got into US Gamer, US Gamer was kind of an island for 5 years. Like, oh, cool, I don't have to do my own taxes, and that was like the best part of it. Oh, cool, I have benefits, I have dental. That was also really cool about it. But you know what? I'm not doing badly. Kat and I, the Patreon's been a huge success so far. That's part of it, and I've picked up a lot of independent work. That's another part of it. I think my body honestly likes independent work more than sitting 9 to 5 every day because I have fibromyalgia. So sitting in one spot for a while, sitting in a spot for 9 to 5 every single day for 5 days a week.
Not great.
It was getting a little rough on me. Yeah. But I do very much appreciate what Kat did with US Gamer. Like we had a great site, and I'm just really sorry that it had to end that way.
We did. We cited articles from it a lot.
Yeah, I wrote some of my best work there, and I'm proud of what I wrote. I'm proud of what we all wrote, and I'm hoping that I can continue writing really cool stuff for everyone in the future. I'm looking forward to hopefully writing semi-regularly about RPGs again. I think that'll be good for me. But I am so far so good, knock on wood. I am not minding the independent life. I am, of course, coming from a place of massive privilege because I have healthcare from the government.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't have to worry so much about that. It was nice to have dental, don't get me wrong. I don't have any dental, but I got all my work done. So.
I was like, oh, okay.
It's like, oh, got 2 root canals, screw you. I don't need your dental anymore. I'm just kidding, yes I do. But it is a big shame because this is a hard industry to make a living in. I've been at it for so long, and it took me a long time to find my foothold to get enough work to survive on. For a very long time, I did part-time work in addition to writing. So I am just kind of going with the flow. I've always been very good
I'm
at
always
that.
so surprised when people like go independent, and like I feel like so many people go independent, but then most of the time they end up getting a lot of support, and like that's great. It's just like I don't know. I feel like I expect. I don't know how to phrase it. I just
maybe you expect people to be more cynical about it, like to. I think I know where you're coming from, even though it is hard to word.
Yeah.
I think part of it too is people are a lot more aware of how hard it is to be under a publisher,
Yeah.
like, or be under a corporation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't have any major complaints about ReadPop. Like, I liked working under them. I liked going to PAX. I really liked going
PAX
to
is
PAX.
great.
And
I've only been to
interviewing
one,
people.
but still.
I enjoyed traveling. Again, they gave us benefits. Like, a lot of people don't give benefits out. But it's still extremely hard to get even a mildly decent place to work full-time in this industry. And I think as it's so much more common to hear, oh, IGN laid off 50 people yesterday. They're not getting extra severance. They're not getting their health care anymore. So
I don't remember hearing
all
anything
the
like that. Well, at least with IGN. But I remember, I know what you mean. Other sites have.
Basically, people just lose their
The
jobs.
GameSpot
at the drop of a
layoffs
hat,
a
put it
couple,
that way.
like a month or so ago.
Exactly. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was IGN. I think maybe I was thinking.
We've had a lot of guests here
Kotaku, maybe.
from GameSpot, so that one, we felt that one.
Oh, exactly. But the point is, people kind of know this is what happens now because of social media, because of people who they love to read saying, hey, I got laid off, I have nothing now. So even though the game community gets a lot of bad flack, sometimes for very, very good reasons, I think there are a lot more decent people who stand up and really try to help out the people that they enjoyed. And that's why I am so overwhelmed and appreciative that we have so much support for our Patreon already.
I feel like that's kind of why we made this podcast, because it's like, okay, well, we're still gonna write, but let's do this podcast, see who we can get, see how it goes, and it's really been a good experience so far. I mean, we're not like super huge or anything, but like,
it's pretty cool that I'm your first interview.
Yeah. I mean, we've like
surprised.
It's been weird, right? Because we've done kind of like half interviews in the past. Like when we had Callie Plaguey on, we were talking to her about like her career and stuff. But it was more like it was just kind of a back and forth about stuff that had happened. I think like recently at that point. That back in was it June? And she was just talking about her like her review experience and the and all that, and it was just not like, I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't like an interview the way this is.
Right, yeah. We actually had Callie on Axe of the Blood God. She reviewed Pokemon Sword and Shield with us, and that was a fun episode. If anyone wants to go back and listen to that.
That's what we had her on for the DLC. So, yeah.
Yeah, she's the Pokemon,
the Pokemon
master.
Queen, as we call her here.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was the last question for the interview. So we'll I don't know who we're gonna have next for the interviews, but now we'll get back to the main podcast again.